Dear listeners, a new day and a new story to discuss. Today I'm going to tell you a story that interests me. Listen and write down what you think about this situation. I'm interested in your opinions. You know, everyone has that moment when they look back and think, this is where it all began. For me, it wasn't anything dramatic, not at first, anyway. Just me, Benjamin Hartley, a country boy stepping onto the crowded, grimy streets of New York City, my dreams packed as tightly as my cheap suitcase. It was supposed to be a new beginning, a fresh start where no one knew my sins or my failures. But oh, how quickly those dreams twisted into something else. I came here right out of law school, full of ambition to make it big as a tax lawyer. Sounds dull, right? But there's a thrill in the numbers, in the loopholes, in outsmarting the system. Yet, the only job I could snag was at a mid-sized, nowhere near prestigious law firm. They shoved me into the bankruptcy team, the underbelly of the legal beast. It was the firm's dumping ground, and now it was mine too. The apartment? It was a joke. 3 of us crammed into a space that you'd hesitate to call livable. But rent in Manhattan laughs at the new guys, the inexperienced ones who think they can make it here on sheer grit alone. So, Brooklyn, at the very end of the subway line, became my home. A declining neighborhood, they said. I'd call it downright desolate. But you make do, right? You carve out a life in the corners of the city's leftovers. That's where I met her. Isabella Martin, or Bella as she liked to be called, came into my life like one of those sharp plot twists you read about. She was a friend of a friend, or so I thought. We were set up at a dinner party, me oblivious to the matchmaking gears turning in the background. Ben, you'll love Bella. She's exactly your type, Sam had said with a knowing wink. His wife, Laura, had orchestrated the whole evening with a precision that should have warned me. But I was too caught up in the excitement, too naive. Bella was stunning, no doubt about that. She had an air of sophistication that seemed woven into her very being. That night, as we talked about everything from our favorite books to our dreams, I felt like I had finally found a piece of the city that resonated with my soul. But remember what I said about plot twists? Let's just say that the evening didn't end with just pleasant conversations. "Let me show you the real New York," she whispered after dinner, her eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my heart stumble. We walked through the city, the night alive around us, and ended up at her apartment, the city lights casting shadows that hid the darker intentions behind her smile. I confess, I was drawn in completely, lost to her charm and the allure of a life I thought I could have. But that's the thing about this city. It knows your weaknesses. It finds them and wrenches them open for all to see. A few weeks into our whirlwind romance, the first crack appeared. A canceled date, a vague excuse from Bella, and my own creeping doubts started to paint a very different picture. Was I just another pawn in her sophisticated games? The suspicion ate at me, night after night, until I couldn't ignore it anymore. I decided to follow her one evening, a decision that now feels like stepping off a cliff. What I found wasn't just a simple betrayal. It was a conspiracy that would have sent a lesser man spinning. There she was, laughing and toasting with Sebastian Cruz, the very embodiment of power and corruption in the city. A state labor commissioner with a reputation that darkened every room he entered. The pieces fell into place with a chilling clarity. I was the outsider, the naive pawn in a game played by masters. Betrayal? That was just the beginning. Redemption and revenge began to weave their threads through my thoughts. As I stood there, watching them, a plan began to form. A cold, calculating blueprint for retribution. They say living well is the best revenge, but I say it's making sure those who wronged you regret it deeply and sincerely. So, dear reader, as you follow my journey through the twisted streets of this city, remember this. In New York, every new beginning comes with old enemies and even older debts. And I intend to collect every single one. Life in New York, as you might guess, doesn't give you what you want, It gives you what you need, if you're lucky enough to see it. And me? I needed a guide, though I hardly knew it at the time. That's where David Dalton comes into the picture, the seasoned bankruptcy lawyer at my firm. David wasn't just a mentor. He was the gatekeeper to the grimy underbelly of the financial world, a world I was now part of, whether I liked it or not. You think you know what you're doing, Ben? David would start every session with this challenge, his sharp gaze pinning me like a butterfly under glass. This isn't just about knowing the law. It's about understanding the human desperation behind each case. He was right. I was naive, thinking my fancy degree could shield me from the dirt and grime of this business. But under his guidance, I began to see the cracks in the facade of every bankrupt company we dealt with, cracks that often started and ended with human error, greed, or betrayal. One evening, as we were slogging through another stack of case files, David turned to me with a rare smile. "You're getting the hang of this, Ben. You might just make a decent shark in this pond after all." It was the highest form of praise he could offer, and it fueled my ambition like nothing else. But it was also around this time that I met Bella. Laura had set us up, yes, but what I didn't tell you before was how calculated that meeting had been. Bella wasn't just another New Yorker. She was the niece of one of our firm's most influential clients. Every smile, every touch, every word between us was a step in a dance I hadn't even realized I was part of. "Ben, you seem distracted lately," David remarked one late night at the office. His tone was casual, but his eyes were sharp, missing nothing. "Bella," I confessed, the name tasting like both honey and poison on my tongue. "She's different." "Different good or different bad?" he prodded, leaning back in his chair with that knowing look that said he already knew the answer. "Different dangerous," I admitted, feeling the weight of my own words. Bella was a tempest, beautifully disguised as a calm sea, and I was already too far from shore. David chuckled, a sound devoid of humor. "Watch yourself, Ben. Women like that can turn your world upside down before you even realize it's spinning." How right he was. It wasn't long before I discovered Bella's nights out involved more than just drinks with friends. There were meetings with men like Sebastian Cruz, whispered conversations in shadowed corners, and deals that smelled more of desperation than opportunity. Each revelation was a twist of the knife already lodged deep in my back. I wanted to confront her, to demand the truth, but David's words held me back.
Patience, Ben.
The long game is where you learn the most about your opponents and yourself. So, I watched and waited, my love tangling with a growing sense of betrayal, each emotion sharpening the other into something fierce and cold inside me. Love and hate, two sides of the same coin, each driving me deeper into a game that was more about survival than anything else. The climax came unexpectedly, during a rain-soaked evening when the city itself seemed to mourn. I followed her again, this time to a rundown warehouse by the river where illegal auctions were more common than rats. And there she was, standing beside Sebastian Cruz, her hand resting lightly on his arm, her laughter mingling with the shadows. I confronted her there, among the echoes of other people's discarded lives. "Is this what you do? Help him launder money through these auctions?" Bella's eyes met mine, and in them, I saw the depths of her deception. "You don't understand, Ben. This is bigger than us." "Make me understand," I challenged, the rain plastering my hair to my forehead, my heart pounding with a mix of rage and desperation. But she turned away, her silence a sharper betrayal than any lie she could have told. As she walked back to Sebastian, leaving me standing alone amid the ruins of what I thought we had, I realized David had taught me well. "Everyone shows their true face eventually, Ben," he had said. And now, I knew Bella's as well as I knew my own. Redemption, revenge, it was all on the table now. And I was ready to play my hand, whatever the cost. You think you know someone, right? You look into their eyes every day, share whispers in the dark, Believe in the lie of the future you're building together. But here's the thing. Betrayal? It's a blade that cuts deep, leaves you bleeding out without even knowing it. That was Bella for me. She was my open wound. After that night at the warehouse, the world wasn't the same. Every shadow whispered her deceit. Every echo in our apartment screamed of her lies. It's funny how the mind works, how it can turn every sweet memory sour. I'd sit there, in that hollow apartment, wondering how many times she looked into my eyes and saw someone else, or something else, like opportunity. I remember the first conversation we had after I caught her. It was in our kitchen. She was there, making coffee like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just shattered everything with a touch to another man's arm. Bella, I started, voice calm, but inside, oh, inside, it was a storm raging. Who is he to you? She didn't flinch, just poured the steaming coffee with hands steady as a surgeon's. He's a means to an end, Ben. You wouldn't understand. Try me, I pushed, feeling that vindictive twist in my gut. She owed me that much. Truth, at last. She turned, leaned back against the counter. Sebastian can give me what I need to make it. He has connections, resources. I'm tired of waiting for more. More. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just a raw, scraping sound. And what am I, Bella? Just a stop along the way? She sipped her coffee, eyes watching me over the rim. You were something real. I didn't mean for it to get this complicated. Real. That word hung in the air, heavy and mocking. Real. Nothing about us was real to her. I had my plan, though. David's lessons about the long game echoed in my thoughts. You want resources, connections? I said slowly, letting each word sink in, laden with intent. I can be that for you, Bella. Let's do this together. Her eyes narrowed, assessing, always calculating. What's in it for you? Let's just say I hate to lose. I'll help you get what you want, but when the time comes, when you're up there where you want to be, you owe me. She considered it, the manipulator caught in her own game.
All right, Ben.
Together, then. Together. It was a lie, but then, so was everything else. I needed her close, not out of love, but because revenge was a dish best served cold, and I was chilling it down to the bone. The following weeks were a masterclass in duplicity. We played the happy couple by day, partners in crime by night. Deals under the table, whispered secrets in dark corners. It was all a charade, each move bringing me closer to her unraveling. The climax came swiftly, a sharp twist of fate at a gala filled with the city's elite. Bella was there, radiant, the star of the night, unaware of the storm about to break. I had gathered enough to ruin her, to shatter the illusion she built around herself. Enjoying the evening? I asked, handing her a glass of champagne, my smile as sharp as the blade I was about to plunge deep. She took the glass, her laugh light and carefree. It's perfect. Thank you, Ben, for making this happen. For being my partner in all this. Partner. The word stung, but it was the last sting I'd feel from her. Of course, Bella, I said, warmth in my voice belying the ice in my veins. Who better to bring you down than the partner who lifted you up? Her eyes flicked to mine, confusion, then realization, then fear flashing through them as the pieces fell into place. I don't understand, Ben. You will, I promised, stepping back, watching as the first domino fell, the murmurs started, and her world began to crumble. I watched as the truth came out, as her connections turned their backs, as her empire of lies collapsed. It was vindication, it was victory. So, as you turn these pages, remember this. In New York, even love can be a weapon, and trust is just another word for liability. I loved her once, yes, but in the end, I loved the game more. And oh, did I play it well? Imagine the fallout, the aftermath of a storm where you're standing amid the debris of what was once a grand illusion. That was me, after I pulled the rug out from under Bella's feet. In the stillness that followed the chaos of her public unraveling, there was a confrontation that had to be had. A reckoning. I confronted her in our now too quiet apartment. The place felt like a stage after the audience has left, strewn with the remnants of our farce. She was there, amidst the shambles of her ambitions, her composure as fractured as the dreams she'd built on lies. "Why, Ben?" That was the first thing she said, not a greeting but a pained, desperate question. Her voice was hollow, stripped of its usual confidence. I didn't answer right away. What was there to say that hadn't already been communicated in the most vindictive way possible? But here, in this empty echo of our past life, honesty found its voice, cruel as it was. "Because you used me, Bella. Because it was never about us, only about what I could do for you." She flinched, as if the words were physical blows. "I thought we were in this together. Partners. Partners." That word again. It tasted bitter now. Partners don't keep secrets, not of the kind you kept. The tension hung between us, thick and choking. There was more to say, so much more. "You think I didn't know about the others?" I continued, the words sharper because they sliced through my own denial as well. Her eyes widened, a flicker of fear passing through them. "Then, save it, Bella. I know about Sebastian Cruz. I know about the deals, the late-night meetings. I thought I could play this game too, outsmart the master. But this isn't a game anymore, is it?" That's when she broke, the facade crumbling completely. She sank into a chair, her figure deflated, diminished. "I did what I had to do to survive in this city, to make something of myself. You wouldn't understand." "Try me," I said again. But this time it was a challenge, a dare for her to justify the wreckage around us. Bella looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears or unspoken truths, maybe both. "I was scared, Ben. Scared of being nothing, of returning to the nothing I came from. Sebastian, he promised me a way out, a path to something greater. And what was I?" I asked, though part of me dreaded the answer. "You were safety," she admitted, the words slicing through the last of my hopes. "You were the good guy, the one I could turn to if everything else fell apart. But it did fall apart, didn't it?" My voice was low, almost a whisper, but it carried all the weight of my betrayal and pain. "Yes," she whispered back, her gaze dropping to her hands, twisted together in her lap. The silence that followed was suffocating. We were two people, stripped of pretense, exposed in our rawest forms. "Where do we go from here, Bella?" I finally asked, the sound of her name bitter on my tongue. She shook her head slowly, lost. "I don't know, Ben. I don't know." That night, I left the apartment. Left her sitting there amidst the ruins of our life together. Walking out into the cold New York air, the city seemed different, harder, more real. I walked without direction, each step taking me further from the man I had been when I first met Bella. The confrontation had been inevitable, the confessions painful but necessary. There was no redemption to be found, not for us. Revenge had been my driving force, and now that it was spent, what was left was just emptiness, a void where love had once been. In the end, I realized that the greatest betrayal wasn't hers, it was my own. In seeking to punish her, I had lost myself, and that was a realization more painful than any deception she had woven. Walking away from Bella and the life we shared was like stepping out of a long, dark tunnel into blinding daylight. Disorienting, but somehow freeing. I didn't know where to go, but I knew I couldn't stay. So I walked. Blocks turned into miles, and with each step, the weight of my past decisions and their repercussions settled deeper into my bones. It's funny how in moments of deep crisis, the city can seem both utterly indifferent and strangely comforting. The anonymity of a crowded New York sidewalk can be a balm for a soul scoured raw by betrayal. No one knows you, no one cares about your sins or your shattered dreams. You're just another face in the crowd. That night, as I wandered aimlessly, I stumbled into a familiar part of town. It was near the old law school, a place teeming with memories of a younger, more idealistic version of myself. A version unscathed by the harsh realities of life and love in the big city. And there, under the harsh glow of the streetlights, I ran into David Dalton.
Ben,
His voice was tinged with genuine surprise. "What the hell are you doing wandering around here at this hour?" I could have lied, could have brushed him off. But something in his expression, a mix of concern and unabashed curiosity, made me spill the truth. I walked away, David. From Bella, from everything. David studied me for a long moment, his face unreadable in the dim light. "Come on," he finally said, gesturing down the street. "Let's grab a coffee. You look like you could use it." Sitting across from him in the all-night diner, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, I felt the last of my defenses crumbling. "I don't know what I'm doing anymore, David. I thought I could handle it, the game, the schemes. But I was playing with fire, and it burned everything down." David sipped his coffee, his eyes never leaving mine. "You were always a good kid, Ben. Too good for the games you got caught up in." He paused, setting down his cup. "What you need is a fresh start. And maybe I can help with that." A fresh start. The words echoed in my head like a promise. Or a challenge. "What do you mean?" I asked, wary but intrigued.
I'm retiring, Ben.
Moving out to the coast, away from all this. He swept his hand vaguely, encompassing the grimy windows, the sleepy waitress, the city itself. "I need someone to take over my practice. Someone I can trust." It was a lifeline, thrown in the dark waters where I was drowning. Why me? I found myself asking. Because, despite everything, I believe you can be better than your mistakes. And maybe, just maybe, you'll prove me right. The offer was unexpected, a plot twist in the narrative of my life that I hadn't anticipated. Taking over David's practice, stepping into his shoes, it was a chance to redefine myself, to build something on the ruins of my past. But could I really leave it all behind? Could I step into the light and not look back? Think about it, Ben. But not too long. "Opportunities like this don't wait around forever," David warned, a note of finality in his voice. Leaving the diner, the early morning air felt sharper, filled with the electric possibility of new beginnings. But as I walked back towards my apartment, the shadows seemed to whisper of old connections, of debts unpaid and scores unsettled. In the quiet that followed, I realized that no matter where I went or what I did next, the past would always be a step behind. Always waiting, always watching. Could I really start anew? Or was I doomed to repeat the same cycles, trapped in the same old patterns? I didn't have the answers. Not yet. But as the first light of dawn began to creep across the city's skyline, I knew one thing for certain. I had to try. For David, for myself, for the chance at redemption that might never come again. In this city of endless nights and fleeting dreams, I was about to test the truth of the saying. Can anyone really start over? Or are we all just running towards the next inevitable confrontation? There's a saying, isn't there? That the night is darkest just before the dawn. Well, I've lived through nights that felt endless, nights where the darkness seemed to seep into my bones and promise it would never leave. Taking over David's practice was like that at first, a daunting, nearly overwhelming prospect. The responsibility, the expectations, they weighed on me, heavy and unrelenting. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, I found a rhythm, a new normal. I won't lie and say it was easy. It wasn't. Every client that walked through my door, every case file I opened, was a test of my resolve, my integrity. Could I be the man David believed I could be? Or was I doomed to fall back into old habits, old sins? One rainy Thursday afternoon, as I was drowning in paperwork and second-guessing every decision I'd made that week, she walked back into my life.
Bella.
She stood there in my office, as stunning as ever, but there was a weariness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Ben," she started, her voice hesitating, as if she wasn't sure of her welcome. "I need your help." That was the last thing I expected. After everything, after the way we ended things, she was here, asking for my help. The part of me that still hurt wanted to turn her away, to lash out and wound her as she had wounded me. But another part, perhaps the part that David had mentored and nurtured, wondered what had brought her so low. "What happened, Bella?" I found myself asking, despite every instinct telling me not to care. "It's Sebastian," she replied, and the way she said his name, with a mix of fear and disgust, made me sit up straighter. He's not who I thought he was. He's dangerous, Ben, and I think I'm in over my head." The details poured out then, a torrent of deception, manipulation, and real, palpable danger. Sebastian wasn't just a corrupt official. He was vindictive, violent. Bella was scared, genuinely scared, and she had nowhere else to turn. I listened, let her words wash over me, and when she finished, there was a silence so deep you could have heard a pin drop in the busy city outside. Here was my chance, the opportunity for revenge presented on a silver platter. I could turn her away, leave her to her fate. It would be justice of a sort, a payback for all the pain she caused me. But as I looked into her eyes, saw the desperation and fear, I realized something. I didn't want to be that person anymore. Revenge had driven me once. It had been my guiding star in the darkest of times. But now? Now I wanted something different. I wanted to be better. "I'll help you, Bella," I said finally, my own voice sounding strange to my ears. Not for the old time's sake, not because of what we once had, but because it's the right thing to do. The relief in her eyes was immediate and immense. She thanked me, her gratitude sincere, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw a glimpse of the woman I had fallen in love with, before all the lies and betrayal. Helping Bella navigate her way out of the tangled web she'd woven with Sebastian was not easy. It required every legal skill I possessed, and some I didn't know I had. But we did it, together, and when it was over, when she was safe, there was a parting of ways that was mutual and, surprisingly, amicable. As I watched her walk away, this time for good, I felt a resolution deep within me. I had faced my past, confronted my own capacity for vengeance, and chosen a different path. It was a revelation, not just about who I had been, but about who I could be. And as the city around me bustled and thrived, as the sun broke through the clouds on that rainy Thursday afternoon, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time: peace. Maybe, just maybe, this was my new beginning, my true dawn.